I have full confidence in Catherine and William. Their judgment is sound, their loyalty unquestionable.
King Charles had complete trust in both Catherine and William. He believed their judgment was wise, their dedication unwavering, and their loyalty beyond question. On the surface, the moment appeared surprisingly ordinary. The king simply placed his pen on an official document and signed his name, a process that lasted only a few seconds. Yet those few seconds carried extraordinary, historical importance. He was not announcing his abdication, surrendering the crown, or changing royal titles. Instead, he approved the official order that permanently closed the last remaining royal household established. Under Queen Elizabeth II, this document formally retired. The final appointments that had continued after her passing transferred every remaining protected responsibility into Charles's reign, and marked the legal conclusion of Elizabeth's royal administration. With one signature, an era that had defined Britain for over 70 years officially came to its end. Charles held the pen for a brief moment before signing, almost as though he understood that once the ink touched the paper, there would be no turning back. The document represented far more than administration. It ended the offices that had continued to function in his mother's name, closed their remaining responsibilities, transferred carefully protected archives, and finalized accounts that had remained active during the transition of power. For Charles, this was not ordinary paperwork, but the emotional closing of the final chapter of his mother's lifetime of service. As Charles prepared to complete the document, Camilla watched him quietly from across the room. She had always supported the idea of one united royal household with a single line of authority under the reigning monarch. She believed that maintaining separate structures after Elizabeth's death could only create confusion about who truly held responsibility. Even so, she felt no satisfaction while watching the king hesitate. Her eyes remained fixed on Elizabeth's royal cipher displayed on the document, the personal emblem that had identified the late queen's official work throughout her reign. In that moment, she realized Charles was not struggling with government procedures or constitutional duties. He was grieving as a son who was about to close the final official chapter connected to his mother. Behind the silence lay an even deeper conflict. Official records prepared for the Privy Council revealed that this same document had been ready for approval for several months. Charles had reviewed it repeatedly, but had postponed signing each time. The reason was a single clause transferring complete authority over several sealed boxes containing Queen Elizabeth's private constitutional correspondence directly into his possession. Those confidential records included personal letters, important discussions, private advice, and unfinished instructions that had remained protected by officials who had faithfully served the late queen. When an aide entered to collect the signed file, Charles held onto it for one final second before letting it go, silently revealing how emotionally difficult the decision truly was. Only moments after the signed document left Buckingham Palace, Princess Anne received a phone call informing her that the order had finally been approved. She listened without interrupting, then calmly asked whether Charles had signed every part of the document. Although her voice remained controlled, the news deeply affected her. She understood immediately that the protected correspondence she had helped safeguard for years would now pass under her brother's authority. Without saying another word, she ended the call and remained standing in complete silence, fully aware that she would soon have to confront Charles about the decision. While the official order had ended Queen Elizabeth's remaining royal household, it also reopened emotional wounds within the royal family that had never completely healed. To the public, the document appeared to be nothing more than an administrative procedure required during a royal transition. However, for those who had served beside Elizabeth and shared her life, it felt like experiencing a second farewell to her death. Charles had signed the order as king, but emotionally, he carried the pain of a son saying goodbye to his mother once again, and experienced the decision as a daughter watching the final working connection to her mother's reign disappear forever. William recognized the necessity of transferring authority into the new reign, while Camilla understood that removing the remaining structures of Elizabeth's household would permanently change how the monarchy would be viewed in the years ahead. Even after the document had been removed from his desk, King Charles remained standing alone, lost in thought. He fully understood that his reign could not continue while parts of the monarchy still operated under Queen Elizabeth II's authority. Two separate systems of leadership could eventually create uncertainty, weaken accountability, and blur the responsibilities of the reigning sovereign. From a constitutional perspective, bringing everything under one household was the only practical solution. Yet emotionally, every office that closed felt like another piece of his mother's presence disappearing from the palace. Every retired appointment, every transferred responsibility, and every archived record reminded him that Elizabeth's remarkable lifetime of service had truly come to an end. Camilla quietly approached him, hoping to ease his burden. She gently reminded Charles that delaying the closure would not bring his mother back or preserve her legacy. Instead, it would only postpone the inevitable transition every monarchy must eventually face. At first, Charles reacted sharply, feeling as though he was being asked to let go of the woman whose guidance had shaped his entire life. Realizing she had touched a deeply personal wound, Camilla softened her words. She understood that behind the king's calm public image stood a grieving son who rarely allowed anyone to witness his emotions. Meanwhile, Princess Anne sat alone at Gatcombe Park, holding one of Queen Elizabeth's old handwritten schedules filled with personal notes and corrections made by her mother. As she slowly traced one line with her finger, memories flooded back, and sorrow gradually turned into frustration. Palace officials continued describing the closure of Elizabeth's household as a simple administrative necessity, but Anne saw it very differently. To her, it represented the final farewell to the people, traditions, and working family that had surrounded her mother for decades. She believed those loyal staff members deserved more than official notices informing them their service had ended. In her heart, they deserved a proper goodbye. At the same time, Prince William viewed the situation from another perspective. As the future king, he believed the monarchy needed one clear chain of command without overlapping offices or competing authority. Maintaining separate households could create confusion, encourage internal divisions, and make future decisions unnecessarily complicated. However, when William reviewed the official consultation records, one detail immediately troubled him. Anne's name was missing from the list of those formally consulted before the closure order was approved. That discovery raised serious concerns, leaving William wondering why such an important family discussion had taken place without giving his aunt the opportunity to express her views before. History was permanently changed. A confidential memorandum prepared during the transition revealed that Queen Elizabeth had assigned separate temporary responsibilities to each of her children before her passing. Charles was expected to oversee constitutional matters connected to the crown, while Anne was entrusted with protecting important family correspondence that carried deep personal significance. Edward received responsibility for several ceremonial duties, and Andrew's remaining role had been significantly reduced, although one unresolved responsibility still remained connected to a sealed archive concerning the future conduct of the monarchy. When Prince William carefully examined the memorandum, he noticed an additional note attached to it. The document clearly stated that Anne had been promised a formal meeting before any final decision regarding the closure of Elizabeth's household could be approved. That meeting never happened, and no official explanation had been recorded. Someone had allowed the process to move forward without fulfilling the Queen's original expectation. The discovery unsettled William because it suggested that an important family promise had quietly disappeared during the administrative process. He realized that what appeared to be a routine transfer of authority might actually become one of the most emotionally difficult moments the royal family had faced since Queen Elizabeth's death. The tension surrounding the household closure had actually begun several weeks earlier following a private memorial service held at St. George's Chapel. After the ceremony ended, King Charles requested that one final sealed archive box belonging to Queen Elizabeth's household be transferred into his official custody. Princess Anne immediately refused. Her response was calm, respectful, and completely direct. She reminded her brother that their mother had specifically instructed the archive to remain sealed until all four of her children had been consulted together. and believed those instructions reflected Elizabeth's final wishes and deserved to be honored exactly as they had been written. Charles, however, viewed the matter from the perspective of the reigning monarch. He believed that once the crown had passed to him, responsibility for official records should also transfer without unnecessary delay.